The People's Democratic Party's chairmanship zoning formula is still making headlines. Report has it that the Northern elders have zeroed in on the former President of the Senate, Senator David Mark, and the former Governor of Katsina State, Alhaji Ibrahim Shema, and the former Governor of Jigawa State, Mr. Sule Lamido, for the position of party's national chairman. The intrigues have, however, deepened as the loyal list of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar and the former Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, have intensified moves to use the appeal courts to return the embattled national chairman of the party, Prince Uche Secondus, and truncate the bid for a southern presidency in 2023. The party has, however, summoned an emergency National Executive Council meeting, NEC meeting, for Thursday, October 7, to consider the report of the Ugwayi-led zoning committee. This is interesting.
It really is. I was listening to you thinking the plot thickens.
Yes.
It's all very thrilling, all these political shenanigans, isn't it?
You should write a novel out of it.
Honestly, it's fascinating.
Fascinating.
So we're going to wait till October 7th to see if the NEC will actually ratify this, the Ugwayi Committee's decision to zone to the north. But you know, now anything is possible. We've had a guest on this show whose analysis was that even if the PDP chooses to have only northern candidates vie for the chairmanship position, they don't have to necessarily zone the presidential candidate to the south. They can throw that open. And if it happens that a northern candidate emerges, they expect that that northern candidate who won the chairmanship will then step down so that the northern presidential candidate can go ahead. But PDP hasn't had an awful lot of luck with chairmen stepping down. Remember, Modu Sharif had to be taken all the way to the Supreme Court because he just would not step down. So I don't know if that's optimism on their part. And I'm also curious to see what they're going to do about Section 47 of the PDP's constitution, which is offended by this sort of neat switcheroo that has happened, because that gives the current members of the NWC to vie for re-election at the convention come October 30th and 31st. But now that everything has been swapped so neatly, they lose that chance. And, you know, it's their right, isn't it? So I wonder how that's going to be resolved. But I'm finding it all very intriguing. Where's our popcorn? We need popcorn for this drama.
This is free drama.
Honestly.
Dr. Bati?
No, well, I mean, it may look like drama, it may look like entertainment to other people, but this is the nature of politics.
Okay.
The two issues I think are very important in this regard. Uche Secondus, the current chairman of the party, has gone to court to challenge some of the decisions of court with regard to the validity of his position as a continuing chairman of the party. And he's been asking for two prayers. One prayer, the key one, is that, look, in line with the constitution of the party, he is required to remain chairman of the party till December, when his tenure officially ends. And that any attempt to remove him before then will be, against the run of the provisions of the constitution. Now, will the Court of Appeal deliver a decision on that in a manner in which it will affect what the party eventually decides? The second point is that, yes, the Ugwayi Committee have said, well, it's likely that the presidential candidate must come from one part of the country or the other. But what we should note is the point that has been made previously on this program, that there's a battle for the soul of Nigeria's main opposition party. You have two tendencies. Those who want the presidency to be zoned to the north, and those who think that it is a turn of the south of Nigeria to produce the president of Nigeria on the platform of the People's Democratic Party. However, the contentious issue has to do with that portion of the constitution of the PDP. I think Section 7, subsections 3 to 5, where the PDP talks about rotational principle, about zoning. What that means technically is that if the chairman of the party comes from the north, then the candidate for the presidency, which is the top prize in the electoral process, must come from the south. If the chairman comes from the south, then the presidential candidate must come from the northern part of the country. So that's the state of play. within the People's Democratic Party at the moment. So you have these forces, pulling and pushing. But as to the question of who will win at the end and whether the party itself will respect its own constitution and its own principles with regard to zoning and rotational presidency, we as pundits were not in a position to determine that. And then the other question to raise is as follows. There is an external part of it. So one, at the individual level, you have individual ambition conflicting with party interests and party constitution and principles. So what is the role, for example, of the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, who had projected himself as a major financier of the party, as a major force in the party? What is his interest? What is the interest of the other persons that were mentioned in the introduction? Atiku Abubakar, former vice president of Nigeria, whom we are told would like to run again. And also Bukola Saraki, former Senate president, former governor of Kwara State, who, we're told believes that power should come to the north central part of the country. So I think it's still a developing story. By October 7, maybe we'll have some clarity when we're given specific information about the direction in which the People's Democratic Party is going. And I think this kind of confusion, this kind of crisis that you have within the People's Democratic Party perhaps provides justification for those people who have been pursuing the argument that what is important is merit, competence, and every part of Nigeria, has a competent person. But how do you place that against Section 14, subsection 2 of the Constitution, and Section 15 of the Constitution that is talking about inclusiveness, equity, and justice? However, Nigeria has, as at this moment, over 70 registered political parties. The residual point for me is that political parties can do what they want to do, either in line with the weight of political contestation, both individual and group levels within the parties. But at the end of the day, it's the Nigerian people that should choose. If we have many political parties, some other political parties can think out of the box and present us with a good candidate. And maybe Nigerians will say, well, we don't care where this guy comes from. We think this is the best proposition for Nigeria going forward. But will that happen? Have we reached that stage? Since 1999, we've been saying Nigeria's democracy is putative. I think it will be a big tragedy if in 2023, we're still talking about the putativeness of Nigeria's democracy.
Well, you started off talking about political realities, which that they are entertaining does not make them mutually exclusive. I do find it amusing and entertaining. But you ended up on the third force that so far is a thing of our imagination. It's far from reality so far.
Well, it probably could happen, but
fingers crossed.
But
so far,
democracy evolves. But we seem to be taking quite a long time.
Ages. Ages.
Third force or 68 other forces? Let's see how it pans out.
Joining us now is Michael Wilson with Global Business Updates from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Morning. Liquidity a bit short of supply rate, basically in China and South Korea, both on holiday today until Friday. On Friday, but the Hong Kong Stock Exchange ended Evergrande until and so that's put China nerves really back on top of traders' minds as we begin the Pacific markets then. And as I said, China closed, but US market on Friday. The mixed performance in Asia, complicated by the news. Evergrande suspended in Hong Kong with a $260 million note due for repayment today. We haven't had any repayment as far as I can see so far. So basically, the markets are very worried about that. Evergrande has to pay $260 million today, and there's only a 5-day grace period on that, as opposed to the 30-day on the rest of it. Very little visibility from the Chinese government about what's actually going on here. And mainland China, of course, right away and on holiday, as I said, until Friday. So we may see a little bit more certainty there. As far as the US is concerned, I did say that the week had ended positively last week, but it's been a weekend of political infighting about the infrastructure plan, the debt ceiling, and all the rest of it. It all remains completely up in the air, and all roads this week, of course, lead directly to the US non-farm payrolls on Friday. Markets are forecasting an increase of 500 jobs. North of that, anything more than that will bring more discussion about tapering, and of course vice versa. If it's lower than that, then it looks as though tapering will be a certain distance away. The most important part, OPEC Plus, that is a meeting today. What will they do about the actual energy crisis in the world, blackouts in China, and all the rest of it? Well, I don't think much will actually happen today. Compliance is is at least 100%. What can be more than 100% amongst its members? They're doing extremely well in terms of sticking to the rules. And this is a natural gas problem, and it's a coal problem. It's not an oil problem. Oil is what we would call an accidental tourist along this particular journey. To the UK, and it's the Conservative Party conference this week. The ruling party, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak has pledged £500 million to pay. Supply crises are actually dogging what's happening at the moment. There is this plan for jobs. What political journalists are telling us this morning, what they're being encouraged to write and broadcast, is the fact that what we're experiencing in this country, the growing pains of Brexit and independence and all the rest of it, and that free enterprise probably will adapt to what's going on. We'll see about that. But that's being pushed at the political conference today. And before we have COP26 late in November, it turns out that US top financiers are coming to a green summit meeting before that Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, BlackRock, Blackstone, and all the rest of them all turning up. There they are, all going to turn up and talk about investment in Britain. They're hoping that these are big decision makers who are actually going to do something about that. As far as commodities are concerned, oil market's quite quiet as far as Asia is concerned. Again, looking forward to OPEC Plus. Brent crude, technical stuff now. Brent crude's got support at 76 a barrel, resistance at 79.50. We're looking. I mean, I have to say that when oil was $140 a barrel, the world didn't actually suddenly come to an end. But I think we're in different circumstances now, and gold is rising very slightly on a lower US dollar. That, for the beginning of this relatively quiet week as far as Asia is concerned, is the global view.
Okay, Michael, great one as always. Two things. Number one, property prices in America going up. This is supposed to be the time people could buy property because of low interest rates and very good savings, but that's not the case with property prices. Does that indicate something is happening with the American economy? Could it be an offshoot of what's happening in other parts of the world like Evergrande? Because it is unusual for low interest rates and fairly good wage in the hand or furlough money that has been kept over the years, and it is still difficult for people to pay for property. Secondly, I thought the UK, one of the reasons the UK left Europe was because of, strong sense of nationalism. Let's support British businesses. Let's keep them within. Britain for Britain, if there's anything like that. But over the weekend, one of Britain's golden jewel was taken away. That was Morrison's, and was taken for cheap by an American conglomerate. Morrison's has lasted over 100 years. It was taken for less than 10 billion. So does that speak volumes about what is happening in the UK now as regards the pound and the British economy?
No, it doesn't. As far as Morrison's are concerned, the expectation is it'll be floated on the stock market in London. That's the idea there. Yeah, I mean, is it cheap or is it expensive? It was sold at a price which is decided by the market, and Fortress didn't want to go any higher than their offer. So a penny did it on each share price, and we'll see how it reacts. The interesting thing is that the former boss of Tesco, it was a chap you may have heard of, Leahy, senior advisor to the American conglomerate that bought Morrison's. I think Morrison's will still be part of the supermarket. The ownership really will go to shareholders rather than staying, I think, with private equity. So I'm not sure it indicates anything apart from the fact that certainly one of the supermarket groups came into the round about the right price for somebody to buy. Whether it's cheap or expensive, I'm not sure that really applies in the market, does it? It depends. The price of something is what people will actually pay. As far as Brexit's concerned, yeah, I understand all that. Certainly, I think there's a big worry about our independence. But the schadenfreude that's being expressed around Brexitators around the world ought to be reflected against the following things. The energy crisis is not just restricted. And as I said, this just in time or just in case attitude towards things, I think just in time exists all the way around the world. It certainly does as supply chains are at the moment. Unbridled and illegal immigration is not just a problem for the UK. It also exists in all sorts of countries, whether it be exodus from countries into other countries or influx as it is here. And thirdly, labour shortages. It's a Europe-wide problem. Don't know what it's like in Africa, but I'm sure you've got many more skilled workers than we have. But as far as the UK is concerned, and the EU, which was what Brexit was, leaving the EU, not leaving the rest of the world, the European Union is suffering from similar sort of labour shortages at the moment. Just because they're not being publicised doesn't mean to say that they're not happening. Service industries, particularly in France, Italy and Germany, are suffering in exactly the same way as they are in the UK. They just happen to have slightly bigger populations.
Well, with regards to schadenfreude, I always find this urge to crow at other people's misfortune quite distasteful. But my question for you is about the Pandora's box of Pandora papers. Is there going to be any kind of outcome beyond outrage, beyond congratulating the investigative journalism that brought all these revelations out? Because you recall Panama Papers. What happened there?
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. What happens is there's outrage that there seems to be a law for the absolutely rich and a law for the rest of us. This is the bright thing about this is it has the Pandora Papers, the Paradise Papers actually shined a big light on offshore dealings right from the Queen downwards, didn't they, across the world. This is part of a massive investigation, massive leakage of papers, which is going to go on for a number of years. It involves 117 countries. It's being masterminded apparently by the BBC and the Guardian newspaper here, but the detail coming out is extraordinary, and it should begin who are, like, for example, we've got King Abdullah of Jordan, Tony Blair, people like this, who no doubt would protect, yet are enriching themselves massively. That smells to me of ghastly hypocrisy. I don't think that much is going to happen, because the problem is that these people can afford to pay highly paid international lawyers. And as we all know, unfortunately, it's very, very difficult to touch those kind of things. But it doesn't stop crusading journalism, not journalism, but actual journalism, getting down to the facts, given these leaked papers, getting the documents and shining a light on these kind of activities. What will happen after that? I simply do not know, because what will happen, these people will say, just as this new donor to the Conservative Party has been saying, whatever I did about the offshore activities and the rest of it, and putting funds from here to there in the rest of the world is completely legal. I mean, it's down to the lawyers at the end of the day.
Well, Micah, I don't know how much more time we have, but the issues are as follows. With the Pandora Papers, how embarrassing would those papers be, considering the fact that there's a combination in the revelations by 650 investigative journalists with regard to politicians, world leaders, and also private persons. Can private persons be called to task for keeping their money where they want to keep their money? Second, in the UK, the Prime Minister is planning to cut tax. Then, okay, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, is talking about a £500 million relief for persons over 50 who will drop out of the follow scheme. What are we dealing here? Politics, populism. And third, the IMF is planning to have a meeting with the president of the leader of El Salvador over cryptocurrency. And the IMF now is trying to give some kind of guidelines. Is this a vote for us on the part of the IMF, a recognition that perhaps going forward, cryptocurrency will have to be more properly regulated, and that is not something that can be wished away?
It as being a suitable indicator of what's going on, because they have a rear view idea of what happens. And are we talking digital currencies, or are we talking cryptocurrencies? Because if we're talking cryptocurrencies, i.e. non-regulated currencies, then I think the IMF, well, good luck to them if they want to try to regulate it. If they're talking about how governments are going to adopt digital currencies as part of their command structures in the same way that China and other central banks are actually looking at this, well, yes, I mean that would give us slightly more accurate ways in which people spend money. That's the way I'd be going if I were the IMF, to see, does it show how money flows around the world? If government issued digital currencies, then fine. Bitcoin and the rest of them are for people who, you know, want to spend their time looking at their mobile phones all day, checking the balance of them. As far as the UK is concerned, yeah, I mentioned the fund that's actually being, it's a reissue of news. There's nothing new about this. What apparently is going to happen is that they're going to try to coach people how to be, they're going to be help for businesses, how to coach people to start their own businesses. We're going to get the details of this later on. Again, I think that when government starts to get involved in those kind of things, my experience shows, my experience is that actually it doesn't really work. It's down to individual entrepreneurs.
Well, the Pandora Papers, how much of the
Pandora Papers, again, an embarrassment to people who look at them, look at the names. And many of these people have professed to care for poorer people and the way in which the world treats less developed countries. Take a look at them. Have a look at the people. When anything happens, doubt it very much indeed. It's an interesting spotlight, but in terms of legally, these people actually being put in prison, I doubt it very much indeed.
All right. Thanks so much, Michael. And I did ask about the property markets in America. We'll talk about that tomorrow. You know, low interest rates and the fact that people can still buy properties as a result of that. But thank you so much for your time. We go straight to Adesua that has pending implications. And
I'll give it a rest.
I'm not going to give it a rest. And this one's got pending implications, but she'll talk about COVID-19
Thank
pandemic.
you, Tundu. Ignore him. Give it a rest, Rufai. That's why it's in Abuja. She owes you nothing.
And this one, go straight ahead. You know we love you.
What would I do without Tundu in my corner? Good morning, guys. Good morning, Dr. Abbas.
Go ahead,
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Tundu.
Yeah.
Morning. Well, COVID-19 has infected over 234 million people, according to the Johns Hopkins University tally. The latest tally also shows that there have been at least 4.8 million deaths globally. When it comes to deaths, we're beginning to see countries such as Russia reports record daily death tolls. Russia has recorded a record high for the 5th consecutive day. We're also seeing deaths coming in from the US, Mexico, Brazil, and some in India. So far, again, at least 4.8 million people have died from this virus. Vaccination also continues globally against the virus. 6.2 billion doses at least have been administered globally. And latest statistics coming out from China, where it all started from. The National Health Commission in China yesterday released data showing that 755,000 doses were administered in the last 24 hours alone, bringing the country's tally for vaccination doses to 2.213 billion doses. Again, China is reporting that it has fully vaccinated over 1.1 billion of its population. So there you have that data globally. But let's look at what the picture is like in Nigeria. The Center for Disease Control, which is responsible, reported a total of 74 cases and no COVID-19 related deaths in the last 24 hours. However, over the weekend, the legal community in Nigeria, and indeed the country at large, lost one of its senior lawyers, Ladi Williams, to COVID-19 complications. And that's according to a statement by the family. It was released by his son and then confirmed by his brother on social media. Mr. Ladi Williams, who was a senior advocate of Nigeria, was age 74. Lagos reported the highest number of cases for this last 24 hours we're looking at. 36 cases were reported from Lagos. Meanwhile, Benue, Oyo, and Rivers State reported 1 case each. Nigeria has so far officially reported 2,723 deaths. To most recent data from the nation's vaccination agency, it shows that almost 5% of the targeted population for vaccination have received a dose of the vaccines available, including the Oxford AstraZeneca and the Moderna vaccines, while at least 1.9% have been fully vaccinated in Nigeria. Again, it's the targeted population of 70% of Nigeria's population. Away from Nigeria, new simplified travel rules have come into force in the UK, with the traffic light system replaced by a single red list. That's countries where the virus is still raging and is most at risk, according to the UK. Now, most fully vaccinated travelers arriving in England from non-red list countries will no longer have to take a pre-departure PCR test. They will not be required to quarantine. However, for now, they will still need to take a day 2 PCR test. That is expected to change to a cheaper test by the end of this month. The testing rules are being eased for people traveling from that non-red list destinations who have been vaccinated in selected countries, including the UK, the EU, the US, and 18 other countries. But India is having none of that, and in a tit-for-tat move, starting today, India will enforce a mandatory 10-day quarantine for all travelers coming to the country from the United Kingdom, irrespective of their vaccination status. The UK government doesn't recognize the COVID shield, which is a copy of the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is recognized by the WHO. And India says we would not sit back and fold our hands. It will be tit for tat. Meanwhile, reports out of the UK suggest that Prime Minister Boris Johnson may sometime this week actually revive the UK's red list of destinations and may likely slash it to 10 or 9 from the current 54 countries on that list. There are also hints that fully vaccinated arrivals from countries including Brazil, Indonesia, Mexico, and South Africa. South Africa has been pushing a lot for this. So travelers from those countries will no longer have to quarantine in a government-designated hotel for 10 days when they get to England later this month. We'll keep our fingers crossed and watch that space and see what the Prime Minister has to say about that. Let's go to Israel, where the country has become the first in the world to make COVID-19 booster shots mandatory for its citizens. In the last 24 hours, the country announced that only vaccinated citizens with booster jabs will be allowed into any indoor avenues such as restaurants, gyms, in fact, commercial and social activities. This new criteria means that nearly 2 million people will lose their current vaccination passports in the coming days. It's seen as a move to help push and encourage booster vaccination as the country reports waning immunity from the COVID-19 vaccine. And finally, if this is any consolation to those who are in doubt, President Donald Trump has revealed that he may take a booster jab any moment from now. In an interview over the weekend, former President Trump says that he got his 2 doses of Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines before leaving the White House. So he was double jabbed and is also going to take a 3rd jab if the need arises.
Well, good.
Okay, please go ahead.
Good for Donald Trump. I think it's important that a leader of his stature, whether or not you agree with his politics, you cannot deny the enormous influence that he has. It's important that he has come forward with this. It's a shame that he took his vaccines in secrecy, kind of trying to kowtow to his supporters, because you'll recall a recent rally after he lost the elections, he tried to encourage his supporters to get vaccinated and he was booed. So I do hope that this will help those going to throw Nazi salutes and what have you at school board meetings that are so vehemently against the vaccine to actually just trust the science. But I want to pay special tribute to Mr. Ladi Williams. I'm very sad to hear of his passing, LW, as he was called in Rotimi Williams' chambers, which I had the privilege to work at, and I worked with him, was a really lovely man. May his soul rest in perfect peace. I'm so sad to hear this.
Well, let's start with President Donald Trump. I think what we're dealing with here is the insincerity, the proverbial, hypocrisy of President Donald Trump. When he was in government, he was more or less an anti-vaxxer, but he took care of himself. He took the jab after he came down with, COVID-19 in the autumn of the year 2020, and his wife, Melania Trump, took the vaccine in January of 2021. But on record, President Donald Trump was not a major promoter of vaccination, even if under his watch, Operation Warp Speed tried to provide support for the major vaccine manufacturers. What is clear to me in the interview that he granted, the statements he made over the weekend, is that, look, when it comes to politics and it is convenient, politicians, or let's be specific, Donald Trump will play the politics to get the votes. When he didn't get the votes, he suddenly saw the light. And now he has confirmed to us that he took the Pfizer vaccine, and I could have taken any other one, whether it's Moderna or Johnson & Johnson. So what are we dealing with here? The redemption of Donald Trump, or the, Damascene moment for Donald Trump, because it is convenient. It is now convenient for him to say that, he took the vaccine and the vaccine is useful. He's even helping to promote the booster shot in the United States and elsewhere.
Yeah.
Another issue that has to be fact-checked with regard to what President Trump said is that he said, President Biden, nobody trusts him. And by imposing vaccine mandates, because of that, he has created a crisis in the United States and increased the population of anti-vaxxers. But of course, if you fact-check that, that is not true. Because he was saying that under his own administration, there was no vaccine mandate, and a lot of people willingly took the vaccine. How did they willingly take the vaccine? When he himself, as president and leader of the free world, was the number one person opposing vaccination, fighting with health officials, contradicting Anthony Fauci, who is the lead, epidemiologist in the United States. So he now says, it is Biden. Whereas it was after President Biden took over that we saw a greater commitment to the vaccination program in the United States. However, in spite of all of that, the United States has crossed the 1918 mark, the Spanish flu mark, with regard to the number of persons that died. Over the weekend, the United States crossed the 700,000 mark of persons who died as a result of COVID-19. At the time of the Spanish flu, the figure was just about 625,000. But what we're told is that increased vaccination may solve the problem, because most of the people who have died are persons who were unvaccinated. As for Israel, Israel is the only country in the world that is insisting on booster vaccines. And there is a protest in that regard. But Israel is insisting that, look, taking 2 jabs is not enough. For you to be able to get into indoor spaces, you must have taken 2 doses and also the booster dose. I guess the purpose of all of this is to further protect the population and to make sure that people take the vaccine seriously. However, Israel has a moral question to deal with. And that moral question to deal with is, how has Israel, so committed to vaccination, as the dominant power in that region, how has it helped the Palestinian Authority and the people of the region of Palestine to get vaccinated? Finally, between the UK and India, what they're playing is politics. It's an indication of the lack of solidarity and cooperation. India is insisting on reciprocal action. You don't recognize Covishield, produced by the Serum Institute of India, and Covaxin, which is produced locally by India. Okay, if that is the case, we will put your own people under the same restrictions. But the silver lining in all of this is the fact that the British authorities have said they will continue to review the conditions in terms of whether you'll be quarantined or not. Britain has something to gain in that regard because it will open up the travel industry. If you get quarantined in government-approved hotels, you spend over £2,000. So if you relax that, maybe Britain will also act in its own self-interest to further reduce that, red list from 54, as you mentioned, to 9, and even further.
All right, in other news, Algeria started producing Sinovac vaccines. Algeria has started producing Sinovac.
Last week, yes. We spoke about that. Yeah. Yeah.
What did you say?
We spoke about that last week.
Yeah, we discussed it last week.
We spoke about it last week.
My question is, Adesua,
yes.
when will Nigeria start? Algeria has started producing Sinovac. When will Nigeria start? When will Nigeria start? I hear Naima is doing some good work as regards that. I saw a docu over the weekend, a documentary that was talking about how Naima had started doing some testing and, and they got some new equipment, to be able to synthesize primers and the likes. When are we going to put more money in the National Institute of Medical Research? If Naima has made some tests that even tested on a rabbit and a chicken, but the, the antibody reaction was low, the immunity reaction was low, when are we going to put money in Naima to churn out our own vaccine? Algeria has started. Algeria is
I may not have a definitive date for you, Rufai, but you recall that during President Muhammadu's October 1st broadcast to the nation, he talked about boosting local production, local capacity, especially when it comes to vaccines and the COVID-19 pandemic. So perhaps we'll hold this administration to its words and see what it does with the local production it talked about when it comes to vaccine and ending this pandemic.
All right, thank you so much, Adeswa. They say seeing is believing. When I see it, I will believe it.